Cybele for just some opening comments of what it's like to be, you know, in your shoes, and some comments about where to from here. Andrea.
Well, I'll first start by telling you that I was pregnant during the eSeries I was at, so I was not able to have a lot of wine on those Monday nights. So I think I'm due. Yeah. I felt very overwhelmed at first, and part of the problem is that when you come from something like this and you go back into your company, you're so excited and you have all this information, but nobody else there has kind of come along on that journey with you. And that can be a little bit deflating when you come in with so many ideas and you're like, what about this idea? We should be doing this and we should be doing that. And it can be overwhelming for the people around you. So I don't recommend doing that because that's what I did. And I think when I look back, I think, you know, not everything that you went through and learned in the past couple days is going to apply to your business right now. And it doesn't need to apply to your business right now. And I think for me, the mistake I made was thinking, I need to do all these things right away, and you don't. So, you know, what I should have done is maybe step back, looked at all of the different things that, you know, we talked about, and then pick and choose where I wanted to start right away, instead of trying to think of all the things I hadn't been doing yet. Because the reality is, as you've probably learned, most people aren't implementing all of these ideas in their own companies right now either. So that would be my advice if I had to give you something to sort of walk away with today. And maybe even just give yourself a week or two to just sort of let it all settle in. Because even now, it's been almost 6 years or maybe 7 years that I did it. I find I'm still going back and thinking about, oh yeah, just recently the session with Terry McBride came up in a meeting I was in, and I was able to kind of call upon that and use some of those strategies. Same with John Seminario. He was, I think, my favorite speaker, and he was talking about pitches. At that time, that wasn't even relevant to me. And I think the biggest thing I was able to take away from eSeries was learning how to communicate my business to different types of audiences, because you're not always speaking to customers and you're not always speaking to you know, investors. Most of the time you're just talking about your business to other companies and other friends, and I wasn't always good about knowing how to concisely communicate what we did. So I learned a lot about communication from my session, I guess.
Great, thank you, Andrea. And Cybele, what about you? Where to from here? She said.
So mine was a long time ago. So it was 2003, and it was the first year. And it was a great experience. And it's the same thing. It was once a week for 6 months. So unlike your experience, where you've got all this information jammed into a really short time period, we had the luxury of kind of revisiting those thoughts week to week. And I think that was really helpful for me, because if I had all this information all at once, I wouldn't know quite what to do with it. So I really agree with Andrea in terms of giving yourself time to digest all the information. But the other thing is, you know, because you're so inspired and you're so energetic right now, don't waste that momentum. Mm-hmm. So try to think about ways of organizing all that information that you will force yourself to come back and revisit it. You might even need to schedule it, put it into your calendar. Because what tends to happen, and I do this myself, I'll go to an event and I'll get really inspired by the speakers, and then I'll go back and I'll feel great, I come up with all these ideas, and then life happens, right? The kids have all this stuff going on, and the business has fires that I have to put out, and then with the best of intentions, something happens, and then 2 weeks go by, and then 3 weeks go by, and then a month goes by, and I've done nothing. So all the stuff and all the information that I've learned and all that inspiration, it's kind of dwindled a little bit. So remind yourself, like, schedule it in your calendar, maybe on a specific time every single week. What have you learned? Organize it, put it into a way that you can kind of prioritize. These are the things that I need to do first and foremost. There may be a list of 10, 20 things. It may be just a list of 3. But prioritize in a way that you know that these are the things that I can tackle and that I can basically do right away. This is the low-hanging fruit. I can feel inspired by completing this, and then organize it in a way that you can complete the next thing the following week. Or maybe some of these things might take you a month or 2 months or 3 months to implement. So for example, one of the things that I implemented in my business was the core values. So learning from John DeHart, John spoke, and the core values is a really important way for me to really establish my company for what I believed it to be, but also what the company and all the people around the company could also believe in. So we actually had multiple sessions that I brought in all of the staff. We sat down together, we brainstormed, all the partners and board members, everybody, we all sat down together. We had multiple sessions, and it took months to implement. Once we did implement it, that's been the guiding principles that we live by every single day. And we did that, I think, in 2005 or 2006. So this was 3 years after I went through the eSeries program. And we actually have the 3 core values in giant red letters on our wall. So number 1 is to amaze every customer with exceptional service. Number 2, to always be improving. And number 3, to make a positive difference. And these giant red letters are seen by everybody who comes in when they get interviewed, and when we make a job offer, we reiterate that. When people do something really well within the organization, and we send out kudos, and we email everybody in the team, we always go back and talk about those core values again. And that's the one thing that I think has really helped to gel the entire company, because no matter what decision we make from that point on, we always go back and say, well, we could make the decision this way or that way. It could be a multiple number of options, but does it fit our core values? And it makes decision making really easy. So that's something that I really took away from eSeries, and I found it really helpful. And I think John actually came back and talked about that years later. He wasn't actually part of the program in 2003, but that's something that I think all of you should probably go back, and if you haven't already established that, that needs to be a priority within your organization. And then if there are other things that you've taken away, make sure something that's really stuck with you and you feel important, make sure you put it on a piece of paper and you put it in your calendar, and you ensure that you're not letting that momentum and that passion dwindle away a month or 2 months away from now.
Great feedback. Another aspect of eSeries is mentors. So everyone here has been paired with a mentor now. Most of them met their mentor Wednesday evening, and they'll be working with them every month for an hour for the next 14, 15 months until next June. Question for both of you, do you have a mentor? And if so, what kind of tips do you have for maximizing that relationship and keeping it alive? And how best should they work with a mentor, knowing that for many of them, it's their first time? Andrea.
So I don't officially have a mentor, but I will say that one of the things I learned from eSeries was how to ask for help, and how to just be bold about asking people if they're willing to give you advice. And I definitely have a lot of advisors. I have a lot of people that I did my eSeries with that I see on a very regular basis, and so I definitely turn to them a lot. Deanna Embry from Licious Living is a very good friend of mine. She recently got bought by Spud, so we have a lot of great conversations. We run every week together. Judy Brooks, she's a very good friend, and I think just being able to ask people for help. If they can't help you, they'll say no, and that's okay. It doesn't mean they don't want to. It means maybe they can't at that time. So definitely, that's my strategy. Others I know get a lot out of a one-on-one sort of ongoing relationship. I'm not really sure why I've never done that, to be honest with you. Maybe because I have so many things I don't know that I just need a lot of different people to help me. But I've been a mentor, definitely, and that's been a great experience because I always learn something from that as well. And I guess, I don't know what else to tell you because I don't have a mentor currently. I'm open to it.
And when you were a mentor, we've got mentors.
Yeah.
When you were a mentor, what worked best Like, what made the relationship work well?
Well, I've done it a few different times. The first thing I would say, my advice to you, was very helpful for me when I was a mentor, in being, what I think was most helpful was when they came very prepared and they came with a very specific issue to talk about, because there are so many things that you could work on in your business, so making sure you take enough time to prepare and you don't come and ask your mentor to pick one of the 9 things in your company that you need help with. And also just, providing progress reports on what you talked about the previous time. I think coming prepared really makes your session a lot more beneficial to you, because you're not spending most of that time trying to figure out what it is you want to give advice on or support on.
And then you're more focused.
Yeah, I will say though, in my company, we do have advisors, so we have an advisory board, and definitely, there's a formal aspect to that where we meet quarterly, but there's also an informal aspect to that where at any given time I can call them or email them or have a meeting with them and talk about some of the more specific things that come up. And in those cases, just like I'm suggesting to you, I come very well prepared. I often give them information before so that when we spend that hour together, it's really dialed, like we really get stuff done. So.
Okay, those are helpful tips. And what about you, Cybele? Do you have a mentor, and how do you work with them?
I don't right now, but I've had mentors in the past. Most notably, Don Matrick was a great mentor of mine, and met him through the FWE, and he was phenomenal, and didn't spend a lot of time together because he's very busy, but I don't know if everybody knows Don. He was the CEO of Electronic Arts, and then he became, I think it was the president of interactive entertainment at Microsoft, and then now he's the CEO of Zynga. So very, very successful entrepreneur here. So it's such an honor to have him as a mentor. I think with all mentorship relationships, as Andrea said, you do need to respect the time of the mentor and make sure that you are very focused, and coming prepared is really essential, because if you're taking an hour of somebody's time and literally you can't even pay for that time because that individual is so busy and would normally get such a huge salary, like, just realize that time is so precious and so valuable, and you only have 60 minutes, let's say. What are you going to do with that time? And making sure that you're super prepared and prioritizing what you want to be asking, because if you've got 5 things that are pressing and you're only going to end up being able to cover 3, prioritize it in the list of, these are the top 3 things that I want to cover definitely, and then if we have time, here are the other 2. And if it is an ongoing relationship, you do need to make sure that that mentor is getting that information ahead of time. So don't send the information to your mentor the day before. Give them a week at least. This is what I want to be talking about this time around. This is what I've accomplished since the last meeting, and at least give them a week, because at some point in time, like, they may have time to read it, right? Because if you just send it the day before, likely they're not going to have time to really digest that information and be able to give you the mind share that you really deserve out of that time. The other thing to think about when it comes to mentorship relationships is that sometimes that mentor will tell you something that you don't particularly feel comfortable with. So that's the job of the mentor. So you might sit down and they say something that's really challenging, and you think, whoa, was that appropriate to say, or how am I feeling about this right now? And I don't really know how to answer that. And you might feel really uncomfortable, but that's okay. And you need to remember that that person's there to help you, and they're there to challenge you, to think about your business. And they have a more objective sense of what's going on around you, because you're so deep in it that maybe it's something that you haven't thought about before. And it's okay to feel that discomfort. So don't start thinking that after the first session you're feeling kind of awful, and you've left that meeting thinking, was this the right match? And maybe I should get a different mentor, and so forth, give it some time. At least give it 2 to 3 meetings, I would say, to make sure that, probably by the second and third meeting, you're going to think, okay, that was actually a really good question, and I never thought about that before, and I'm glad they asked it. So just remember that if you are feeling uncomfortable with a mentor initially, it's okay.
Thank you, Cybele. Let's touch very briefly on fear. Women naturally are more risk averse than men, and after everything that we heard over the last few days, there's encouragement to go far, to pitch for business, to go into the US, or basically to grow. But that can be scary. And what do you do to overcome fear? Andrea?
Well, one of my core values, I spoke yesterday about John DeHart as well. We've really incorporated that into our business, but I've definitely incorporated core values into my life. And one of my core values is take risks, although ironically I feel no risk for some reason in my business, and I think a big part of that is because I'm doing it. Risk is generally and fear is about control, at least in my world. I'm probably a control freak, so I guess I don't feel that risk. It's more for me in life where, like when I go to Hawaii and I believe I'm going to get eaten by a shark, that's the kind of fear I have. But there are times when there's fear in my business in terms of decisions I need to make. Even when we opened in Seattle, there's lots of times when I've been afraid because I just don't actually know what to do or what that next step is. And when I get in that space, I think, all I do is basically just sit down and write out the options and figure out what is it that I'm afraid of. And then once I know what sort of the potential options are, then I know what direction to take. But I just need to get into kind of a space of calm. I don't know if this is related, but something I thought about before I came today was I actually had a lot of fear about taking the eSeries program to begin with. And I don't know if anybody else felt that way, but I remember thinking, do I know enough to be in the room with all of these other people that have businesses? And I don't have a business background. I learned business through kind of doing all kinds of weird entrepreneurial things in the past 20 years, but I'm not formally trained in business. I don't know very much business terminology. I mean, I've learned it, but a lot of it I learned in eSeries, and I felt that everyone else must know all those things. And what am I doing here in this room with everybody else? And I think eSeries showed me that most people actually don't know as much as we're all in the same boat. Most of us all feel that we don't know enough. And what you kind of learn as you go through eSeries is all of the things on the flip side that you actually do know because you're doing it every day in your business. And that was really eye-opening for me to see and learn actually what I did know and what I could bring to the table. And so I think fear is kind of around us in any situation that we get into. And you just have to sort of step over it somehow and just kind of move forward. And I always think, and this is probably not good advice, but what's the worst that can happen? That's kind of how I think about most things in life now. And occasionally that has not fared well, but for the most part, I think it has worked very well for me. And I also will say, from going through eSeries and also from implementing some of the things from eSeries into my business, I don't pretend to know what I don't know anymore. So I used to go into meetings with bankers and write down all the words they said that I didn't understand so that I could find out afterwards. And now I just don't even waste that kind of time. I just say, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then, they love explaining things to you. Most people like to be in a position of being a bit of a role model or a teacher. And so I learned how to kind of overcome that fear by just being very clear with people about when I don't understand what they're talking about. I think that's a much more efficient way of operating.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very helpful. And what about you, Cybele?
Mm-hmm. So I think fear is something very common, especially among women. And I think there have been many studies talking about how the difference between men and women and how we feel ready for the next promotion or the next job. I'm sure many of you have already heard this, right? Where, and I don't know the statistics off by heart, but it's something like a man needs to feel only like 50% ready to apply for that next promotion, whereas a woman needs to be like 80 or 90% before they'll actually put their hand up and say, I'll take that role. And that's a huge difference, right? And why is it that we as women feel that we need to be so well prepared before we're actually willing to take that risk? And I'm not sure. And maybe that's what we're supposed to be like, to be good mothers and to genetically be protecting our families. But in business, sometimes that will fare well, and other times it won't. So the way I look at fear really is, like my current partner, he's basically said something to me a while back, because I was really fearful about a lot of different things. Public speaking being a huge one. For example, I used to hate public speaking, and Christina probably remembered the first time I actually had to go up there and speak in front of people. I thought, oh my gosh, like I was literally shaking, and I was that person who would be driving to a speaking engagement wishing that I would get into a car accident rather than actually be there to do the speaking, and that's how bad I was. But then I started to get over it the more and more I started to do it. I also feared being in front of people, being the face of the organization. I always wanted to be in the background. I didn't want to be the face of the organization. I didn't want to go do this public speaking. I didn't want to be in the media. I always avoided all of these things that could have propelled the company forward, but I was in avoidance mode. And it wasn't until the media started coming to me, because in technology, there aren't very many women in tech. And people would want to come and speak to me and not my business partners, who were all men. So all these opportunities started to come, and I thought, okay, at what point am I going to get over myself and just, darn it, do it? So I started to do it and realized that it wasn't that tough anymore. So my current partner, he said to me, fear it stands for false expectations appearing real. So FEAR, right? So, and we always feel this, that we have this fear of the unknown, and we don't know what's going to happen, and you have all this fear inside you. But then when you actually go and do this thing, it's actually not so bad afterwards. And I'm sure all of you have experienced that. So this imposter syndrome, or whatever it is that we all feel, let's all just try to get over it and just do it. So I'm going to tell you one quick story about what the worst case scenario for somebody who feared public speaking actually happened to me.
I was there, I think.
Were you there?
Yeah.
This was my TEDx
Yes, I was
experience.
there.
So
She got a standing ovation, though. It was pretty
yeah. So I go to do this TEDx thing, and it was such an honor to be asked to speak for TEDx. So I get to this event, but the precursor to this, what happened this Friday, was that that week my kids came home with lice. I was going through a divorce, so I had a legal agreement that I had to basically respond to 60 pages by the Wednesday. Friday was the dress rehearsal for TEDx. Saturday was the event. And then Sunday, I was speaking for the Mom Inc. movement in front of like 500 moms. So by Friday, I hadn't prepped my speech for Sunday, and I hadn't really thought about TEDx at all. So I get to the dress rehearsal, they put you up in a hotel, and I get up there and I do this thing. I'm like, okay, I got this. I'm feeling pretty good. I rocked it. So the next morning I wake up after not very much sleep, and I thought I'll write my speech for Sunday. But of course, I didn't eat. And that whole week, I slept probably 2 hours a night. And by the time I got up on stage, I started to feel like, wow, okay, this is kind of exciting. I got this, and I feel pretty good. Within 5 minutes into my talk, I start feeling woozy. And you know when you feel like nauseous, and then that sweat comes over you? And I was like ready to like, thought, wow, what am I going to do? Like, I was either going to pass out in front of everyone or walk off the stage. So I walked off the stage 5 minutes into my TEDx talk. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I get into the back and people are knocking on the door. Is she okay? I had friends like driving over to the venue to see if I was okay. I felt awful. I thought, I blew it. Like my one TEDx experience that was going to be amazing, I totally blew it. I had my head between my knees. I was like, trying to like get the color back and send the next two speakers in to speak. And then finally I said, you know what, I got to go back and do this. Because if I don't go back out there, I'm going to kick myself for the rest of my life. And the MC's going, yeah, are you sure? Yeah, maybe you shouldn't go out there. It's okay. And I'm like, no, I've got to go do this. Like at that point, I was like, I'm going back out there. So I go back out there, and I told everybody. I said, this is what happened to me. I've had a really bad week. I didn't take care of myself. I let my life go out of balance, and I'm here now to finish my speech. And I did. I finished my speech, and it was all okay. And
It was
then
awesome.
people came up afterwards, and I have women coming up to me afterwards, giving me hugs. They were in tears, and they thanked me for being human. So this horrible experience that I thought I completely blew, which I was so fearful about, actually turned out to be an amazing experience in the end. And now I have a story to tell.
That's amazing.
So forget about the fear.
Well, and actually that kind of goes to what Terry McBride was saying earlier in his session, which is take a challenge and turn it into an opportunity. And face the fear, go to your cold spot, ask yourself what is really this fear about, and then dive in and throw up if you need to, behind the scenes. Okay, let's have one more quick question for both of you. Final thoughts, words to inspire these women, to keep them energized about their business. Words of wisdom.
Oh God, that's not an easy question. Words of wisdom, word or words?
Plural?
Yeah. You know, I think for me, you know, what I think I enjoyed the most about eSeries is just stay in touch with the people that you felt a connection with here, because I think you're drawn to people in these kinds of situations that you know over the years you're probably going to get a lot of support from and give support to. And so listen to that and really make an effort to stay in touch with those people, because there's a few people that I've sort of fallen out of touch with that I would like to reconnect with, and this has kind of reminded me of that. And I think also really use what FWE has to give you as a female entrepreneur, because I have been involved with all kinds of organizations over the years, and FWE is definitely by far the organization that has helped me the most. So like, don't just think that this is the end, because there's years and years and years of support that they can give you if you're, you know, open to taking it. So I think from an FWE standpoint, that would be my advice. I think from a personal standpoint, what's the worst that could happen? There you go.
There you go. Thank you for that. And Cybele, what about you?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Andrea in terms of the support that you get from the FWE. And you know, when I am going through some of the toughest parts of my life, you know, Christina has been a great friend to me. There have been a number of women through the FWE that I've met over the years that I have called in those moments of, wow, I felt like I've just been kicked in the stomach. What the hell am I going to do? I will call, and because of that trust that's been developed, I feel that I can be completely open and say, I need some advice. What do I do in this situation? So please stay connected with each other. The other thing to think about too is you've got a room full of customers here. You know, who's going to support you more than somebody who's been or are currently in your shoes? And we're all looking for new customers, right? We're all looking for new clients, and I think new client acquisition is always the toughest. And you've got a room full of supportive women who you can use each other's products and services and be out there selling for each other. So use that as an opportunity as well, because within this powerful group, like imagine what you can all do together to propel each of your own businesses at the same time. So I would definitely do that. And again, do remember that everything that you've learned in the last week, make sure you don't waste it. Make sure that you're going through and prioritizing the things that you want to be doing, and maybe the FWE can help and nudge you along and send you little reminders along the way to say, are there things that you have wanted to accomplish as a result of the things that you've learned, and maybe it's time to start thinking about those if you haven't already. Maybe some kind of follow-up from the FWE might be helpful. And then from a personal standpoint, I think the main thing is forget about the fear and make sure that whatever it is that you want to accomplish, you just go for it and do it.